Hi, Education 480 class and 580 participants as well. My name's Nick Winger. This week's article is The Strive of It by Kathleen Cushman. As you can see, here's my notes on our article. All the little information I found important, and as you can see, I've kind of color coordinated it. Um, those are just skills that I like to utilize and hope to teach to students in my class. Um, it really helps me stay organized. But getting to the matter at hand, the article itself. So my reaction to this article is I found it to be extremely interesting, and I found many of the ideas that were mentioned in it to be very complex and kind of hard to answer. Um, For example, Cushman highlighted the theme of indirect instruction, and one of the most essential elements of indirect instruction being that element of flow. Cushman, I saw throughout, she mentioned flow a couple of times, but didn't really elaborate on the idea. And I think that's because the idea of flow is pretty abstract. You can't really describe flow the same way for each student or the same way for every person. Every person kind of learns at their own pace, and identifying that kind of helps us as educators out. But we also kind of have to be aware of the fact that by us forcing content down students' throat, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to learn it. We have to find what works for them and the pace that they kind of need. Um, Another quote that I pulled from this that I found interesting and kind of wanted to elaborate on was few of these few of them and this is Kathleen Cushman saying this, of course. Few of them started their chosen activity because they had natural talent. That was a concept that I found really interesting because I always figured natural talent leads somebody into the realm of whatever they want to do. If they like plumbing, they're gonna, and if they have a natural ability at plumbing, like I figure you have the skill for it, do it. But this article kind of pointed out that a lot of the times students become interested in something because they want acceptance. I wrote in my notes in my article. Uh, Also, all are searching for validation at a young age, and that's kind of what I wrote when for the part of the article where it says getting started and keeping going. Um, and then I wrote a little bit after that validation of love, and I think as for a lot of students, if they're not receiving that kind of validation at home, they may feel worthless, and it like we don't necessarily need to say we love them, but we need to know that we care about the students and it not just their mastery of the content, but them as individuals. I think that would help uh, really help mastery of content in the classroom because the kids actually know that they're validated and somebody cares that cares about their success and cares enough that they want them to succeed. Another major takeaway and a reaction I had to this was towards the end of the article, Cushman kind of talked about what can be done in the classroom. And one of the ideas she has was developing interesting and fun lessons. And although that may be difficult in some classrooms because not all content is going to be interesting, it's our job to make it as interesting as possible because students want to enjoy their time in the classroom and not just sit and listen. If you're just getting lectured at, you're not gonna remain the most interested, and you're gonna find alternatives to your time, especially now in today's classroom where technology is such a huge aspect of it. It's harder to maintain the attention of the students, and I think uh, strong teachers develop ways to utilize the technology, but also keep the students off of it because they need to learn certain skills before content mastery. And what I mean by that is the habits of experts that are on page 53. To me, those closely resemble the learning habits of lifelong learners because you're you ask good questions. You always want to know if there's a better way to do something. You break problems into parts. You don't look at the big picture. You break down every step because you know you understand that you understand the pattern because and right after it says break problems into part, look for patterns. Those are traits of lifelong learners as well as experts. So those are the traits we want student to learn because if they have those traits, then content mastery in any subject should be a lot easier. Um, Now I'm getting down to the four PLC questions. Um, what exactly do we expect all students to learn? How will we know if they've learned it? And how will we respond when some students don't learn? And how we will respond when some students have already learned? Back to my script. For the first question, we expect learn students to learn whatever is interesting to them. Excuse me. The articles uses many different examples, such as Joshua and his interest in architecture. The teacher was skeptical at first because how is such a young student, not even out in the world, gonna develop an interest in architecture yet? But as she kind of investigated, she understood where his interest came from and actually encouraged him, and he ended up where did it say? He ended up getting a job out of it. So we want to make content interesting because we expect students to learn content, but it's up to us to make that content as interesting as possible. Another person to mention was Aaron. Aaron in the article. Aaron didn't understand content because it wasn't interesting to him, and he failed science twice. But he stated himself, once content was made interesting, he was able to find success. And if you want to read about Aaron, he's on page 53 of the article. By the way, the article was found in Educational Leadership, which a lot of our articles have come from, and I'm actually looking into probably getting a prescription of this because this journal has a lot of good articles in it, and I enjoy reading them. On to the second question. We will know students have learned because they'll be able to show the mastery through examples and through being able to discuss the different steps in a process. Um, this article didn't get to the school aspect until late in the article, but it described the different patterns that people follow, especially when Cushman talks about all the different business people that she talked to, like tattoo artists, surgeons. They all developed the same habits, but they all came about it a different way, and um, that's those adults show their mastery through their work, which is what we want students to do with schoolwork, but we also have to find different ways they can express the mastery. For example, one student may be able to exemplify their mastery through oral communication, whereas another would, if you have them write it down step by step, they might be able to do it that way, but they can't verbally communicate it. We have to identify the ways that they can best describe their mastery of content and utilize that in the classroom. But we also have to have those tools in place, the habits of experts, the tools of lifelong learners to kind of get them there. So by having them exemplify their mastery, we're also having them use the tools that we want to teach them. Um, Question 3, what I wrote in my little script is, I believe this article is identifying the reason why students have a hard time learning in school. I really believe that. Much of the theory falls around the way content is presented in the classroom, and students are often confused not because they don't understand the content, but because they're uninterested in the content. That's the big takeaway that I got from this is we can identify why students aren't learning, and sometimes when we identify that, it might fall on us because we're either not making the course challenging enough for them and it's too easy, or they don't they're bored and they're uninterested, which is a major problem in keeping students to high standards and high levels of expectations. But it's our job as educators to do that. Um, I wrote right here, and I keep expressing it. We need to, if we can teach the students the habits of experts and just have them have the habits of experts as tools in their tool bag, and have them ask good questions, break problems apart, look for patterns, rely on evidence, consider other perspectives, welcome critique. I think if we open up their minds to use those tools, then that will translate not just in your subject area, but across the board in every subject area. And then a response to students that have learned would be have them expand on the content they have already mastered. Although a grade might denote that they know the content, you won't really confirm that until you have the student do something that exemplifies that they truly master the content. An idea that I had uh, after reading on page 54, to a striking degree, the successful curriculums kids describe involved interdisciplinary projects that had students work in teams toward an outcome that mattered to them. And what I wrote above that is teach skills necessary to complete project and allow students to use those skills. That's why I keep mentioning the habits of experts, because if those students have those tools in their tool bag and you teach them the content in a fun way, you combine those tools with content in a fun way, and then give the students a project to elaborate that or to kind of demonstrate that they understand the content and they can put the knowledge behind the content into a project that's getting them to show examples of mastery. Um, that's all I have for you guys. And like I said, the name of the article was The Strive of It by Kathleen Cushman. It was published in Educational Leadership in February of 2010. I also have listed everything, so if you guys need any clarification on any of my points, feel free to in your reply in the forum, kind of highlight anything I said, and I'll try in my response to answer as many questions as you guys have. Thank you.